Hello and welcome to a new episode. Right, to recap, we was in Port Miou and we'd been there around about a month when then we discovered there was a potential few free boats lying around. So that's what we're going to look at in this video. Now, it was actually looking at one of them, it then very quickly became apparent that straight away there was more value in that than the one I already had. So from there, kind of that's where we was kind of at, and I think my mind was fairly made up even before that I wasn't really willing, even if I had it, to pump loads more money into my own boat. And the cost of fixing what was broke, there is boats out there, so not in this episode but in an upcoming one. Regardless of free boats, there will be an episode where I compare what you can get for the amount of money it would probably have cost to fix my boat. But yeah, a few free boat options lined up, and people always say there's nothing worse than a free boat, and in some cases that's definitely very true, but maybe not in all cases. So I hope you enjoy the video and I'll see you at the end. Alright, so the option behind me is I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Now, it's not free at the moment, but there is potential for it to be an option because the man who owns it could potentially be interested in one of the other options if I already made the switch. So he's not aware of the situation with the other one, so a bit complicated, but yeah. This one, it's interesting. It's you know, there's obvious downsides. If it weren't for the fact that it had a really big engine in, it would just be up for free. But it's a fairly serious sailboat. It was a prototype one, and I just like how different it looks. And interior space, it's quite big. I've been on it, the deck's all secure, as you can see. You've got like the windlass and stuff there. The rigging's in alright condition. Obviously that bow rail is very broken, but well, more broken than my own, to be honest, but there's just a lot I like about it. And the engine's actually in the middle of the boat rather than towards the back of the boat, and a table goes over it. Now, the inside of it, there's no photos that I can show of the inside. I briefly saw through the hatch, and there's a lot to do in there, but you know, afterwards you've got a fairly decent sized boat. It's probably too big a project for me at the minute. If I was working and I had a whole, you know, summer where I was at work somewhere near the boat and I could come down and do the work on it, it'd be a serious contender. But yeah, for now it's just the wild card, I guess. So yeah, on to the next option. But before we go, another interesting one, has many boats in here. Nobody's been seen on this one for over 4 years, and it's a mallard. So there's a lot of similarities to mine. It's basically the actual legitimate blown up version of an Ecume de Mer, and mine's like a side version blown up Ecume de Mer. So maybe I'm like an Ecume de Mer uncle, and this one's the Ecume de Mer father, perhaps. I've seen inside another one of them, you know, that who knows what's happening with it, but it's there and nobody goes to it. So you know, like in the UK, when husbands will tell their wives that they're going to play golf for the weekend, I have this theory that all of these boats that are sat in ports, I reckon husbands are like, oh, I'm just off down to the boat for the weekend. They don't go down to the boat for the weekend, do they? Yeah, there's got to be a reason. But if you don't want to believe that theory, on a more serious note, I believe the theory. But I have been told that, like in the south of France, it's just a status thing to say, oh, I own a boat. That they sit rotting in ports, but somebody gets to say, oh, I own a boat. So yeah, let me know what you think. There's another one. They're pretty cool, aren't they? That one is actually the blown up Ecume de Mer. It couldn't look more like an Ecume de Mer. In fact, I think it's called something de Mer as well. It's just like a really big version, I guess. I'll just show you this one on my way around, because it's, as far as new boats go, I don't like how they look. There's something cool about that one. I really like all the round hatches. It's a lot of money though. So behind me is another Aloha 29. So obviously probably looks very recognizable because it is the same type of boat as the one I already own. Now, likely free, well, is available for free. I'm actually in the process of talking to the guy. If you're used to seeing mine, you might be thinking, well, yours looks a lot cleaner. You're gonna have to just trust me that it's not. Like, the deck on mine got some top lack paint over the top, and well, top lack plus. In fact, I think the first time I used Perfection, then it was expensive, and the other times I just went over it with some top lack plus. But I didn't do it properly, so, and I think there is a bit of paint on the deck on this one, but the deck itself, the gel coat's actually there, whereas on mine there were loads of areas where the gel coat weren't. So, obvious pros. It's all there and more or less ready to go. There's a bit of and ahhing about whether the mast has sunk, and it's something that if we take this boat, we're going to have to explore. But as far as things that need to happen on it, there's just not a lot. And, you know, once that deck's had a wash, it's just, I need a boat that I can go earn some money on. And even the fact the waterline's actually still painted on, whereas on mine it's not, and there's not paint splashed down the side of the hull, there's obvious like bits that could do with a touch up, but I did all of that on my boat. That won't take too long. And actually that one, the hull looks in a lot better condition than the one I have. And as you can see, the navigation lights are in a much more sensible place than they are on mine, and it's the same on the back as well. Quite a cool feature, there is an actual light halfway down the mast, which I've always thought would be a good idea. It's just quite nice when you're at anchor and you want to light up the boat a little bit, or you want to see where you're going. That's quite handy. I'm not actually sure if that's one that can move up and down. Some of them are on, some I doubt it, but yeah. Another thing I'd say as well about this one, the mast looks a lot newer than my mast, and the boom, etc., is just generally in better condition. And the boom's sat up quite a bit higher than it does on mine, and spinnaker pole is already there, and as you can see, the actual anchor hatch for the anchor lockers there. And I'll probably do a much more in-depth video if this ends up being the one that we go along with, but the winches are in better condition. Everything's just 100 times more ready to go. And as I say, it might not look like it from now, but I've been on, had a look, and you've seen the issues I've already got with my own boat. So yeah, that's that option. I mean, it's a silly idea, but it is a little tempting to just take all the free boats, go over towards Porquerolles, and there's a few little places where another guy who has a few boats actually, he has one of them that just sits at anchor all of the time, not far from Le Ciotat, or Le Ciotat, and he says even in a south wind the boat just doesn't move. It's got a fair bit of anchor line out, whatever, it just stays there because there's a bit of protection from a little island as well that's there. So yeah, it is a little bit tempting to just go put a few boats out at anchor. Could have like a little boat island, does that make sense? And then just spend some time making them all decent enough. The ones that don't sail could get a few tenders or a tender, and a little boat hotel, an anchorage hotel would be quite cool. So this one, hopefully it's not too windy, it's called Kalos. I can't find the model of it. I will have looked again before I put this video on to see if I could have found it. It looks in a right sorry state, and the interior doesn't look any better. However, there's just a lot that I like about it. It just has that more classic design. I really like the windows at the front. The windows as well, just having that little bit of frame around just makes the metal bit of frame just makes them look less like cheap, I guess. And they're actually in good condition. So whereas on mine it's all cracked from the sun over time, these ones actually are in fairly good condition, and you actually can see out of them when you're sat in the boat. So at the start of, back end of winter, there was a Swedish boat, and I went and spent a bit of time, you might remember, with like this couple that had come down from Sweden, and they had a boat that sat fairly similar to this, sort of same height, etc. And when you were sat inside on the sofa, you could see out of the window, which it made a massive difference. And it's something that I thought about quite a lot on mine, where you can like look up through, I can't see out through it because it's too cracked, but when it's dark you could, if it was really clear, maybe see the sky through it. But in that you saw everything around you, you could see the sea through the window and stuff. And then when you're inside and it's a bit cold or whatever, and you're out at anchor, it's quite nice to not just feel like you're sat inside of a boat. Sorry, that doesn't make sense. So it's just quite nice to be able to see outside of the boat what's going on and stuff, and you very much can with this. So this was the original one that I was made aware of. There's quite a lot of work to do, so you can't really see it from the deck, but there's a few spongy areas that would need fixing, and there's a really big one right there, and on the inside it's sagged, and someone's just used that expanding mousse for some reason to fix it, which obviously isn't the ideal. But there's quite a lot of wood on the inside, which I quite like, and the one next to it is actually the same type of boat. You can see what a clean would probably do to it. Something else I quite like is The deck's just painted with anti-slip. It doesn't have this modern sort of textured gel coat, because the problem with that is it's really hard to make it look neat if there's any sort of little scuffs or whatever. So yeah, it's quite handy, less slippy and cleaned up. You know, you could get it to look something like this. There's just a lot to it that I feel like I like. So it's got an electric windlass. How well that works is anyone's guess. Or if it would ever work again. But yeah, electric windlass. I did check out the hatch for the door and stuff. It's fine, it's just not on properly. But yeah, you have this nice solid sort of beam. You have an actual roller for the anchor, which I don't have on mine, and it's something that needs sorting if I ended up keeping the same boat, or even swap to the one that's the same, because the anchor can't just sit on, which when you're leaving an anchorage in a bit of a rush, you end up struggling to get the anchor up sometimes. I've actually had it where I've had to leave it dangling for a few minutes, and it's very easy to forget, and then everyone shouts at you telling you your anchor's doing this at the front of the boat, which is not ideal. Yeah, it's a bit longer than mine too. I quite like that it's longer, it's narrower, but as I've said with mine before, that some of that interior space is a little bit unnecessary. The width is a bit unnecessary, it doesn't need to be so wide, and I end up paying for a longer boat when I go into ports a lot of the time. I also like that it's got the wooden tow rail rather than, you know, the metal ones. And as you probably know, if I could choose any boat, I'd have like a slightly classic design. The roof on it is a little bit higher, so because of that, I'm not losing as much space as you would think looking at it, but I am still losing some space. And actually going inside of there, it's quite tight, so like getting in and out of the V-berth and the gap in between the doors was very difficult to get in and out. I think I'd end up having to just take the doors off. Someone's painted the mast, which, if you know why anybody paints mast, let me know in the comments, because I'm confused why someone has painted the mast, but someone has painted the mast. And then all the paint is flaking off, so it would look messy unless you took the mast down and got all the paint off, which would be a big job that you probably wouldn't really want to do. Yeah, the cockpit as well, it's quite nice. There's a fair bit of like teak, like you've got one of them like teak squared off floors, which looks quite nice, and then you've got the teak backrests. So given a clean up, this would probably be the nicest looking boat on this list, I'd say. At the minute, it's the ugliest boat on the list, but going forwards, it could very much be the nicest one on the list. We don't like to talk about this one because it's annoyed me. This one, hands down, would win the contest, and it's probably going to the bin, but there's more about this one in an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. Like, yeah, I won't ruin it, but yeah, there's a story about this one coming up. Just before I leave this one, come and have another look at it, because I can't stop coming and looking at it. I don't know how I'd feel being so close to the water on the back, but it might be quite nice. If I just needed a sailboat and I didn't need to live in it all of the time, I'd probably go with this one. The other thing with it too is it could get signed over today if I went into the office, and it's probably going to the bin. whereas the other option maybe isn't going to the bin. Someone would probably buy the other option. This one, I think they've tried to sell it a few times. There's no knowing whether the engine and stuff works, because the battery was flat when I went and had a look at it. But again, quite a lot of work would be needed. If the engine worked, and as I say, if I just needed a sailboat, I could live in there. I've lived in a smaller boat before. And I'm still tempted even with the other option. Not necessarily just because I could do it quick. There's one further down which I wish I could show you, but the pontoon's broke. But just imagining what it would look like. And I'm not sure of the length, but it's definitely longer than, I'd say it's probably about 31 meters. It's one of them where everything on the inside is there, and it's not like it's missing any of the things. And the actual wood that's used on the inside, which you get with quite a lot of the older boats, they used decent wood. I was looking at a Rival 34, because that sort of boat would be like an ideal one. And there's a free one at the minute for like this boat rehoming place, but the interior is just being ripped out of the boat, which I'd be suspicious of that. Like, I don't know if something's happened to it, but yeah, them boats, when they made them, a lot of the interior wood is teak, or this word, which is kind of an alternative to use. Whereas a lot of the newer ones, and my one, it's just, the word will come. What's the word? Plywood. Plywood? Yeah, plywood, or marine plywood. Layered wood, where quite a lot of the time then they just put a veneer, is it? Just over the top. A very thin layer of wood to then make it look like nicer wood. It's not the case with that one. It's got the wood where if you spent the time to sand it and make it look nice, it would look nice again. The headline, it's got a bit of headlining, but not really any reason to have the headlining. And for some reason there's a lot of carpet in there, which I understand putting carpets in boats in colder places, but I'm not a fan myself. So yeah, you could make it look nice without having to spend a ton of money. And rigging wise, apart from the fact the mast is very ugly because someone's painted it, the rigging was in decent condition. You'd have some repairs to do on the deck, but I think afterwards it'd be a pretty looking boat. I can't rule it out just yet either, so I feel like it was very hard when I looked at it because someone just left it and dumped everything inside. So when you're trying to move things to look at things and you stood inside, you're looking around, because the people from the port who came with me were just like, whoa, you don't want this. I was trying to look underneath everything to see what was actually there. This is where all the broken boats sit to die. This one's been here for years. Actually, when I had my other one, this one was very nearly an option, just because it was in, and the deck and stuff still is in fairly good condition, but everything's kind of just been stripped from it. But it's a shame, it's quite a spacious boat on the inside, and as you can see, I'm just getting blown on and off this pontoon the damage it's done to the front of this boat here. There is a roller though, and I need one of them. And it is just sat there. I wonder what's happened to this one. Okay, so the sangria. In France, you have the two most popular types of boat. So as everybody knows, Beneteau. And then you have this word here, which I don't know how to pronounce. That's another fairly popular type of boat in France. So both of these type of boats normally are associated with like big rich boats because they're the most well known. And then you have Bavaria. I don't think that's French. I'd have to check. But you see them all the time. And both of these different brands or builders, both of them have a lower cost boat as well. It still tends to be a little bit higher than similar boats of the same size. So for example, Beneteau do the Beneteau First, so you can get like a Beneteau First 30, and there's not much difference in it than with my own boat, but because it's a Beneteau, they always tend to be a little bit more expensive. I'm not a big fan of them. I don't really like the design, and they tend to always have like headlining, which I just don't really like. I'd rather it be like mine, where it's not just bare fiberglass with headlining over it, but it's kind of gel coated and looks neat. But that one, not the Beneteau, the other, one of their lower models is a Sangria, and you see them everywhere in France. So that was another option of a free boat. I'd not seen inside it. It's one of them, in it. If no other options were there and it could sail, I've got to get out of there somehow. It could then maybe be an option, but it's 26 foot, so quite a bit smaller than the one I have, and it doesn't have an inboard motor or an outboard, but I would then have to get an outboard for it, and I've done that before, having a sailboat with an outboard motor on, and you'll hear a lot of the time, well, you only need it to get in and out of the port, which in theory, yeah, but if you get caught out and it's fairly windy, and when you're living out there, and I've had it before where I've needed to go, you wouldn't always want to be doing that with an outboard on the back, because as the boat does this and the outboard comes out of the water, whether it be long shaft, super long shaft, whatever, it's still, the prop ends up coming out of the water, and it's a bit stressful and scary when that happens. So for that reason, that it is a free boat, that's why it's still in the video, but probably not the best solution of the ones that were available. Alright, so thanks for watching. Yeah, in next week's episode, we find the perfect free boat, but is it too good to be true? You'll have to find out in the next episode. But thanks to everyone who's commented, shared and watched the video, and thanks to, as always, my patrons and everyone who supported over on Coffee. It's really, really appreciated. And yeah, I'll see you next time.